Hi, and welcome to another episode of PDA Dad UK. In this episode, I'm going to be speaking to journalist and author Dan White about the issue of men's mental health. So as I say, welcome back to PDA Dad UK. Before we go on, can you just hop on, hit like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so that you know when new content's coming up. As I said, we're going to be talking in this episode about men's mental health, and I think particularly this stigma that's attached to that and the way that it's sort of maybe something that's different for men to deal with than for women. And talking in generalizations, I understand, but I think it's an important factor to make, and for both sides to understand what I think guys are going through in mental health, but also how that translates to women's understanding of us. So hopefully this is something that's really insightful. And I had to include my good friend Dan White. So Dan's a journalist, he's an author, he's on TV loads talking about the important side of neurodiversity, disability, and so much more. He's a fantastic guy. And I'm going to hand over that interview. It was a recording we did, a Zoom recording. So it was a conversation we had that just revolved around these issues. Here we are. And as I say, I'd love to welcome Dan White. How are you, Dan?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Apart from being in a tech hell this morning, I'm fine. Just call me after two laptops, Jackson, and both of them are flat completely. So I'm running on a phone. I think I'll be on pedal power in a minute.
There'll be a monkey and a hamster in a wheel somewhere.
That's it, yeah. My feet are going to the dozen. If my head does that, we're running on low. All right, yeah. That's not the diazepam doing that. Right. Yeah.
Well, I've been wanting to speak with Dan for a while on this, because something that's really important to me and something that I see a lot of men particularly struggle with, I think it's important for women to understand as well. There's some differences as well as the similarities between men's depression and mental health and that of women, and really what men go through, because I think the stigmas that surround mental health are somewhat more challenging in some ways for men, purely on the basis that as men, tell me if you think I'm right on this, Dan. I feel like as guys, you get this kind of, you have to still be the manly man, and to talk openly about depression, about mental health, it's kind of almost supposedly admitting a weakness.
No, absolutely. We are still, what we 2021 veering headlong into 2022, and we're still burdened as a society with social stereotypes about people's position in life. Whether it be business, whether it be jobs, old school jobs for the white boys and stuff like that. But we're still laden with it. There is a perception still of women not going to work, and women have to stay at home and look after the children, and men having to go out and do the job. I mean, you see it everywhere. It's endemic. You can see it on television. Every single advert is a 2.4 kid. The man's coming from work. He's got his time. Oh, what's for dinner? Here we go. So, of course, it just seeps from the media out into society.
There's these ads for, I won't slay them too much, so I won't mention who they are, but they've got these ads appearing at the moment for alarm systems. And it's the wife calling the husband from home. He's, you called, the next door neighbours have been very, panicky stuff. Oh, we could get robbed. You need an alarm system. But it's that endemic thing of, like you say, this is how it is. Men are the ones at work, and women are the ones at home, and that's how it is. And
it's still absolutely right. Wherever you go, the attitudes still remain, and you still have tabloid newspapers and things like that are adhering to that stereotypical rhetoric. So that's where it all falls down. I mean, you have the wonderful Me Too movement, which is not getting as much airplay and time as it should do, because obviously people are being gaslighted onto other things now, thanks to society in general. But the Me Too movement are desperately trying to change this narrative. And there's so many men like ourselves who really are behind them and want to change it. But we're always coming up against this brick wall of stereotypical nonsense. And that's where men's mental health is still told to remain in the shadow. Still go out and 2.4 kids, feed your family, tuck your tie in your top shirt, get your briefcase and your bowler hat, all that nonsense. It's just got to go. But it has got to go, because it doesn't do anyone any good. And it just makes me so cross.
It really does, and this sort of resurfaced for me in a couple of ways recently, and why I really wanted to do this. I felt more needing to. The first one was, I don't know if you watch MasterChef Australia. It's on W. You probably don't. Being an Australian, I do. I watched it this year, and there's a chap on it who called Brent. In fact, there's two chaps. One of the judges who does the food tasting and says yay or nay kind of stuff, a guy called Jock, and he carries around worry beads. And it's one of these things that sort of, apparently in Australia it's become a big thing, and he's even got onto social media to sort of explain, they're just worry beads. Somebody gave them to him. I find them really helpful. And it links back to mental health. But one of the contestants was a guy called Brent. And these shows, they're so intense. And people don't realise it. When you're on them, you've got schedules, you've got to be there, there's stress in there, you've got cameras, you're being interviewed, then you've got to cook, and there's time pressures, and it takes its toll. And this guy, Brent, he's a tradie in Australia. So he's a Boilermaker, I think it was. And he's just the most, he's got a beard bigger than mine. He's just the most.
Is that possible?
Classic Aussie, hey, you go, mate, very funny, self-deprecating sense of humour. But he was one of my favourites from the start. It was, I really want this guy to go well. But it got to an episode where the previous couple of episodes, he hadn't been himself, and you could see it. He'd lost his spark, if that makes sense. And a couple of times Jock had asked him, "You're all right, mate, you don't seem you." And he was like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm just, focused or whatever. But it got to this episode where they had, it was an elimination challenge. And there's two parts to it. So he got through the first cook, but wasn't safe. So it was like a fewer number of them for the second cook, and they had to do something.
Yeah.
And he just got to it and he said, I can't do it.
I need to go home. It's all my mental health out.
What's happening? Stress or pressure, or what are we talking?
I think I just can't get it out of my head. I think I've come to the point where, that's all that's going to help me. Just getting home and just sorting myself out. I've just got nothing left.
Jock ended up handing him his worry beads. He says, take these, a nice little gesture, I thought. But it got to me that it was this guy who was, as Aussie man as they come. But he really allowed himself to be vulnerable, but actually explained, I know I need to get in a better place. And I read up since, and he's doing much better.
Good.
But thinking about my own place in that. And what I liked about that specifically, we'll move on to other stuff in a minute, but what I liked about it was he was just being open and honest. And I think he opened a lot of doors, certainly in Australia, because it's a wildly popular show there. It's massive show there. And I think it opened a lot of doors for guys to actually acknowledge, I sometimes feel crap as well.
No, that was great. That was great. That was done through the medium of daytime television. But once again, it shouldn't have to come down to that. There should be just problem we have, as you know, mental health services are non-existent, and just nothing ever seems to change around here. And it's good, but it's also semi-tragic that this has to happen through a cookery show on television to get that message across. So it's great in that way that he felt open enough to do it. I mean, I'm like on my Twitter feed, I'm constantly going on about my mental health and everyone's mental health, but we shouldn't have to be secreting it through the media. It should be just an acceptance from society that we should just be able to talk about it. Well, then about anyone going, oh, you'll be all right, just cheer up. There's a lack of knowledge, real lack of knowledge and understanding, which is surprising when you consider so many people are unaware that they are depressed. And the person who is talking to you, telling you to cheer up, doesn't realise that they're on that same downward slope. They really don't.
That's so it. And I think it's harder for us as blokes sometimes. And I'm being very general here, and I'm not trying to say all guys are the same. But I certainly found. So I went through recently. I've talked about it on my channel. But I went through a period where I recognised I was heading down a bad path. I just before the summer holidays in my house. Usually at the end of the summer holidays, I'm at a point where I'm really close to really being burnt out because we've had the kids home full time. When you've got kids with extra needs, who've got SEND and stuff like that, it just piles the intensity up, especially with PDA involved. You're constantly monitor and rein things in, and it's mentally exhausting to a point. I think that's with any kids, but
yeah,
I do think it does take to another level when you've got that kind of constant pressure of having to maintain anxieties and keep your eye out for triggers and all that kind of stuff.
No, yeah, absolutely.
But I just know at the end of the summer holidays, I'm always at that point, but I could feel myself almost like my brain was going, this is coming.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you know now.
Yeah.
And I feel proud of myself. The first thing I did was I recognised it and I called the doctor and said, I'm close. And because I'm a registered carer and all that kind of stuff, they do listen a bit more, I think, because they recognise you're a kind of a linchpin in the situation. If you don't do something quick smart, then, this is just going to be a lot more expensive for the NHS if we don't do something now. So, and they put me, it was a very mild antidepressant, but it got me through. It kept my head above the water for that period, if you like. But my experience, I'd love to hear your experience on this, because my experience is that it comes to a point where you have to reach a crisis point in the UK at the moment. And I basically saw my wife, I've spoken about this and she's okay with me talking about it, but she was close to, doing something silly, potentially harming herself in the process.
Yeah.
And she called the crisis team and she said, here's where I'm at. And they said, well, I'm sorry, because you're not actually act of trying something, then it doesn't matter. We can't do anything about it. Essentially, because, and I use this analogy, because the knife's on the table in front of you and not actually in your hand, we can't do anything.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me, though. No, it doesn't surprise me.
How's your experience been with that kind of stuff?
Well, I was just saved, I must admit, by a very wonderful personal local GP who she's still there, thankfully. Thank Christ she's still there, because she's looked after me and my wife and Emily since Emily was born. But it was a case of I reached that breaking point of having a breakdown and not literally being able to move, because the anxiety was so electric through my system and I was so on fire that I literally couldn't move. And my eyelids were so heavy with just thoughts of utter and total self-destruction. So I was actually taken down there, which was good, by my wife, taken down there, and situation was addressed. But it was just a case of she made the time to listen to me. She made the time to give me those course of antidepressants and to help me work through which ones were the best for me. Because as you know, not everyone works for everyone else. But it's the same thing. So it's just the same old situation again, that you have to reach a crisis point before anyone can do anything within the limit of their financial or other constraints that they have, which is just such a tragedy of society. Like I'm feeling suicidal. Well, we can't do anything about it till you hit the concrete. It's absurdity. It's absolute absurdity, because there's just no money within the system. And when there's no money within the system, it creates apathy within the system. If you're working in the system, and then that apathy spills over to when you talk to people, because you don't see a way forward, and then you're putting that on to other people. I mean, I went to a counselling session, and thankfully I took my wife with me. It was a local one, NHS funded. You could tell it didn't have any funding in it. And the first thing the woman said to me was, have you ever thought about hurting your child? Which is the first thing she said to me completely out loud. And then, of course, that set my anxiety off, which, of course, kicked in my bipolar. And when we left, I said to my wife, was that me? Did I take that wrong? She said, no, that was, excuse my French, she said, no, that was fucking dreadful. That was disgusting. But you could see it in this counsellor's eyes. You could see you could see her spirit was broken with it all. Yeah. And part of me felt for her, because part of me felt that she's probably doing this all day, every day, looking for external help and being told, no, there's nothing, no, there is nothing. You just got to talk through it with people. So part of me felt for her that her will was broken, but then that will was broken onto me. So, of course, it just exacerbates an already problem that already sits there, which really doesn't help. And I don't want to get better. I want to better manage this. I know it's never going to go away. So I'm just very, very lucky. I had a beautiful, and still have a beautiful local GP, family GP, because they are very rare. But for people who don't have that, it's just, you just wonder where they're going to go, what they're going to do.
It's such a backwards thinking process from the financial side. It's like, because when it gets to crisis point, you start having to look at admissions and dealing with the costs of that. I mean, the thousands of pounds a week it costs just for one person to be in a mental health ward in a hospital is astounding. And they're full. And they're full because these people have reached crisis point. And more than that, there's the people, and I know people who this has happened to, where they've been, they've attempted suicide 3 times in a week, haven't had the follow-up required. There has not been we're going to be coming out and checking on you once a day. It hadn't been admitted. And so ended up succeeding. And that's a mum, a wife, a friend, a life gone, because the situation was that the support necessary was not there.
Yeah, no, and just following, because it's not just the person who's passed, it's the family that's got to deal with repercussions, it's the friend that's got to deal with repercussions. And not to sound cold or critically callous, but it's the company that person worked for. They're going to lose on that body being at work. It's just what this government, like every government, fails to realise is a long-term plan. No one speculates to accumulate in government anymore. It's just always think for the next day, think for tomorrow. Don't think any further than that. Yeah, don't think any further. This mental health paper is still non-existent. It's probably going to turn out to be as useless as the paper on care that was published, or the levelling up for disabled people that was published, which I worked out that equates to £1.29 extra per disabled person every year. It's as if the will itself isn't there inside government, which is odd when you consider these politicians will probably have the most awful mental health and the stresses they've got to deal with. It's that just no one wants to talk about it, because if you talk about it, then it means you're going to have to invest in it. And if you invest in it, what they don't realize is that people will see the benefits, people will get help. And once again, not meaning to be a cold political type, but people will be able to go out more and enjoy life and work and spend and stuff like that. So to me and to you, it's and to other people with mental health, it's a bizarre scenario that, let's not think about that. Let's think about it. We'll plan for tomorrow and then worry about it after that. You think, I really don't understand where we're going with this. Mental health is a killer. And people die every day of it. Beautiful people. Every life is important. And it just breaks my heart, because they're crying out and systems want to help but can't. Where are we at as a society when that happens? Where are we at?
That's it. It's so, like I say, it's backward, but it's also, it's amoral. And that's what I don't like. There's no conscience to it. It's all very bureaucratic without being heartfelt, and I really have a problem with that. We all want to save the world, we all want to reduce greenhouse gases and move into electric cars, and Boris has got his agenda for that, and that's all fantastic, not criticizing it. That's exactly what we should be doing. But for the things that we can be doing now that present a problem right now, it just seems like we've got such a backwards view on it.
Exactly. A well society is a good functioning society. That's just logic. I can't see the situation improving until someone at the very, very pinnacle of government openly admits they have the same issue. But if they openly admit they have the same issue, that they will openly have to admit that funding is terrible, unless, of course, they get private healthcare, which they probably do. So I really don't know where we're going to go with this. But I can't see the situation is any better when it comes to women's mental health.
Then the question comes in: if they do, are they going to be fit for the job? Is the question that's going to get
it. Right. Yeah. Are you fit for the job? Yeah. And
so it's not. And this is where I think certainly from my perspective, it was like when I went to the doctor to say, look, I'm struggling. There was real concern, because the knock-on effect potentially is, if I'm not deemed mentally healthy, does that mean it's going to be because my family have mental health issues endemically within them? Does that mean that I'm now going to be considered? What about the kids? Is that going to have a knock-on effect to how they're? All these things went through my head.
Yeah.
And in the end, I thought, no, the right thing to do is going, if I can get onto a medication briefly now, I'll be able to get on and do something, and it won't be a problem, and I'll be right. And thankfully, that's the way it worked. But it was a real consideration. And I think that fear is there for so many people, because, and again, it's all the stigmatization, but it's also the way people respond. Is when you open up and say, I'm struggling with my mental health, one or two things happens. Either you get somebody who's very, oh man, anything I can do, I'm here. Inbox is open, give me a call, come around for a coffee, whatever. And the other one is, oh, I'm so sorry, man. And here for them for 2 years because not because they're being callous, they just don't know how to approach it.
No, they don't know how to approach you. Education, once again, that's the same around disability. There's no education around either, and the two are endemically entwined because mental health is a disability. I.e., if you are disabled by doing something by your condition, therein it is a disability. So mental health is a disability because, as you know, as I know, as my wife knows, as your wife knows, as millions know, you cannot function. You just want to curl up in a fetal ball and not do anything. You cannot do it. And I, to my dying day, I will state that disability is a mental health condition. I mean, but the tragedy of it is, I mean, you're a parent, I'm a parent. Both our children have disabilities. I mean, we need to get it sorted because we don't want it to stray into our children's aura. We don't want it to affect how our children live their life. I mean, Emily is very aware of my mental health, and she wrote a beautiful essay on it at school. But I don't want this to impact on her life as she's growing up. It's almost selfish to say I don't want it to, because shit. I'm supposed to be looking after. I don't want her to know Daddy is always sad. We all need to get help, and we need to get that help somehow. So it's just the long-term thing. I just don't look at the long-term thing about the car crashes it will cause, because I personally think they're just disinterested.
Yeah. And that's certainly how it comes across, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear otherwise, but certainly all the evidence points to just a general it's to steal a phrase, it's an inconvenient truth.
It is. I mean, I'm almost banging on about a democratic social, but the problem is with a capitalist society, it's all about the acquisition of wealth over anything else, and it comes at the cost of human life. Unfortunately, you only got to look at the way disabled people are treated. That they're seen as not being productive, so let's just chuck them a few pence and just not worry about them. And it's the same with mental health. Oh God, another one. Oh, let's just kick them out. As long as we keep the wheels of industry grinding along and making money and profit and shareholders. So the two very much like climate change, as we're talking about that. There cannot be any reversal of climate change under a capitalist society because too many people are making money out of it. I know it's a tragedy to say it, but it just will not happen. It just will not happen.
I remember a friend of mine saying that there'll never be a cure for cancer because there's too much money in the actual disease itself.
Yeah. It's a terrible thing to say, but you can see the fact in it. There's so many research grants out there available.
That's it. It's insanity that it all comes back to money. But I mean, I think there's some way how to get it out there and people understanding that it's like getting into the whole SEND world and disability world, which has been a journey I've been on for a few years now.
Yeah.
Because as a neurotypical person whose only disability is my face, I got sort of dumped into this world, and it was like I liken it to Harry Potter. It was like popping through the wall at the station and like, what's this? And you're suddenly in this whole other world that exists that was there all along, but you just didn't know.
No, exactly.
And I've gotten to know so many people now. People like yourself, people like Adam Pearson, Simon.
Who? Alan Pearson? No, I don't know him. Who's Alan Pearson? Masterchef. Alan Pearson on Masterchef. I have to look that up. Okay, yeah, make a note of that. Yeah, anyway, I'll digress. Go for it.
Awesome people. And the thing is, beforehand, I would, if I was walking down the street and someone's in a wheelchair, I'd think to myself, how do I look at this person? Do I look? Do I not look? Do I, and
do I speak to them? Do I speak to the carer? What do I do? Do I kneel down? Do I stand up? Do I ask what's wrong with your legs? No,
it's you treat them as you treat anybody else. It shouldn't be another consideration. But I had to learn that in a way. And
so did I.
Well, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's something of educating that. Half the problem, I think, is that there's this sense that we have to treat people differently because they're going through something. And it's not. If you're a friend, you should be a friend throughout regardless.
Yes.
You don't change your patterns because somebody's going through a rough time. You might make yourself more available if you need it. Hey, I'm here. But it shouldn't become it's important to talk about it, but it doesn't mean that every conversation has to relate to it. And it's learning those sort of ins and outs of things, but just treating a person as a person, because that's ultimately what they are. And like I said, I mean, I've spoken to so many people now who I wouldn't have been able to have these conversations with them, discover this amazing world that exists out there. And I think so many people are missing out on that because there's this sort of just a lack of education and understanding as to what disability is. Disability is something that impacts your life physically or mentally.
Yes, absolutely.
Remove your humanity, and I think that's what gets missed.
That's what I mean. That's it. But unfortunately, we live in a society that bases your worth on your productivity, and that's where the issue is. If you can produce, then you're valuable. If you can't, if you're just not going to do it, then you're not worthy at all. But you and I know that that's just complete crap. Your life should be valued on who you are, what you give to other people. I know it's an old hippie ethos of mine and yours, but it's true. It's true. I mean, it's true. Look at the relationship me and you have. I never would have met you if we hadn't been in this community. We built up a great friendship, and so was this Alan Pearson chap. And and Simon and everyone else I've met in this community, Adam Hills and people like that I've met. But I mean, but the disabled community is so vastly, wonderfully diverse, with colours, creeds, cultures, religions, varying disabilities, genders, sexual orientations. It's just incredible, and it just beggars belief why people won't investigate it further when there's so much beauty within it. So much beauty with it, and so much want and passion and determination with it. I can see it with you and your child. I can see it with Emily as well. But it's the opportunity. It's giving them the opportunity to do it that's wanting.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond that. The thing that I learned, I think, through my wife's mental health, through the brief spats I've had with my own mental health, through meeting other people who I know struggle with mental health issues and disabilities that are associated. But it's that everybody at some point, and I believe this now, I think when you hit that point, so for me as a neurotypical person, when I hit the depression, I got an insight, however brief, into life, for the daily life of probably my daughter would be a great example, living with that anxiety and that stress that's constantly bubbling away within. It gave me an insight into that, and that's what I could take away as a positive, was I actually got a glimpse, however, distorted or out of focus it was a glimpse into the world. And I could take that away and leave that as an understanding within myself to meet her where she's at.
That's why I think what people with mental health issues, people in the disabled community, I think we're the greatest empaths at the end of the day, because we all do understand each other, because we take the time to understand each other. But I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I know Emily suffers from anxiety also. I suffer from anxiety, and I must admit we're on the subject. Anxiety, although it gives you a taste of other people's life, it can be such a pain in the arse. I can have a great day. I'll have a great day, absolutely hard-working day, and I'll go and have a nap for an hour, wake up, and it's just there, and there's no reason for it to be there.
Yeah,
but it's almost as if you had a sleep, you're not being productive. Why have you had a sleep? And it's like, oh, for Christ's sake, give me a break. You were not there when and now I've woken up and I'm tense, and I really want to have a diazepam, but I don't want to have a diazepam. Because if I have a diazepam, I'll just be zoned out. I don't want to be zoned out because I want to be creative. You're like, oh, for God's sake. There's just no rules to this. Yeah, it's just no rules to this, is there? And if I have a diazepam, I can't drive. I can't take Emily out. It's like, frustrating. Mental health is perpetually frustrating. Yeah.
But it produces amazing. This is what I don't think people don't get. It produces such amazing stuff.
Yeah.
When you look at, like, if you want to go purely from a scientific perspective, Elon Musk, Tesla, he's an autistic gentleman. He's neurodiverse. Tesla himself was likely posthumously diagnosed.
Oh God, yeah.
Neurodivergent. Yeah. Stephen Hawking, very physically disabled, but mentally astonishing. The stuff that he achieved, in spite of his disabilities. But then you get to, I like the other people in life that somehow inspire. How many musicians are autistic? Or I was talking to a while back to Rachel Mason, who was one of the judges on Sing Ultimate A Cappella. It was a Sky show. But she has synesthesia, so she sees music in colour. It produces colours. Right, astonishing, beautiful stuff. You've got Dan Harmon. He's the one I keep running on about. Creator of Community and Rick and Morty. Discovered he was autistic through one of the characters he wrote into the Community. And his stuff's amazing. No one could think of that. I honestly don't think it could be thought of by a neurotypical person, because you just don't have that sideways perspective on things to come in a different angle and see the world in a different way.
No, I think you're right. I mean, there are so many people. This is going to be this all comes to reality, being the truth to me. So many people can see that I am undoubtedly either PDA autistic or autistic, and I've been worrying about it for years. But even the person who diagnosed Emily admitted it. My wife can see it. Emily can see it. People around me can see it. Yeah. But if that's the case, then I absolutely embrace it, because the productivity I get out of it, the imagination it gives me from what I create, the books I've just written, the stuff I write, that just the way I look at life, I wear it like a badge. Emily wears a PDA autistic diagnosis like a badge. She's so proud of it, and damn right she should be, because that's who she is. That's what makes her. Same with your daughter. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's who you are. It makes you. Plus, it gives you direction in life. Now she knows. Emily knows what she wants to do with her future, which is just great. But unfortunately, I think on that side, I mean, I'm approaching 50. I don't think I'll ever get that diagnosis that's going to give me that badge. So I've got to wear it as a loose fitting badge. But mental health, as much of a pain as it is, I think it does give me the impetus just to create and keep doing stuff and doing stuff. I really think it does.
Yeah. I generally agree. Did you ever see Stephen Fry's documentary on bipolar disorder that he did?
So it's quite a few years old now, isn't it?
Quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
What I loved was something he was doing, and that was asking every person he interviewed. He interviewed Carrie Fisher and a whole bunch of famous people who actually bipolar. But he asked the question, which was, would you, if there was a switch and you could go off right now and just turn it off, would you do that?
Yeah.
And without exception, none of them would.
No, I wouldn't. Which is quite bizarre, because the other thing is I don't know what my life will be around outside that. Will it make me less empathetic? Will it make me less kind? Will it make me, will I no longer stop to appreciate what someone else is thinking and saying? So no, I wouldn't dare, because I think it's given you and given me and given your daughter and my daughter and your wife and my wife and everyone, I think it's given us great gifts that we can see, that other people can see. I know there's pain and there's a lot of it. There's a lot of turmoil and self-doubt, but I think that equates itself out with the positives that you have to take from it, because you cannot switch it off and it will not go away. You cannot be cured of it. It's always going to be there in a little room at the back of your head, and the door creaks open from time to time. But what it does give you, because I think you lose different sheens that other people have that gets them through life. You lose them. I think it just makes you generally, it's quite odd to say, quite a hard thing to say, but people might disagree. But I do think in cases it makes you a better human being. It gives you a more empathetic look and understanding of other people, because you pause to think about it. And I think as a creative thing, it does give you a creative hub, because it makes you more open to talk about things, more open to write stuff, to talk about stuff, like this wonderful thing we're doing here. We've got no guards about it. We're quite happy to talk about it because it's who we are.
So, unfortunately, we got cut off at that point. Something happened and we couldn't quite finish the conversation. But just such an insightful conversation. And I get so much from listening to Dan and understanding his perspective on it as someone who lives with this on a daily basis. If you are struggling with your mental health, please do reach out and talk to somebody. Talk to your GP. Talk to the Samaritans if you're, considering something harmful to yourself. Talk to whoever needs to be talked to. Reach out to the crisis team. There'll be a bunch of links in the description for people that you can reach out to, and charities that help with mental health. Thank you so much for joining me. And please, if you're struggling, or if you've got a story to tell about how you came through, about the support that you got, please do put it in the comments. We'd love to hear about it, and who knows, it could be something that we can work in sharing later on as a bigger picture sort of episode perhaps. Please do hit like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so that you know when new content's coming up. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and if you need the support, reach out for it. If you need to message me, you can do so. I will try and address everybody who messages me on that. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the next episode.